Oh boy, here
Uh,
we go.
hey
Here we
guys,
go.
this is Cam for 15, and I'm joined again by my uncle Daryl, and we're here to talk about Chicago Bears NFL draft picks for the 2020 draft. So one, I'm very excited to make this because I thought the Bears actually had a pretty fairly good draft. You know, one of the better drafts in the last few years. I think Ryan Pace, I think he did a pretty good job drafting. There's only really one pick I'm kind of iffy on, but other than that, I thought he had a good draft. But other than that, welcome Bears fans for our thoughts on the Bears picks. Obviously, it might be different than some other people, maybe the same, but yeah. But also, we did do a round one draft reaction or overall thoughts about round one for all the other teams since the Bears couldn't pick in the first round. And if you haven't seen that, you should check that video out. We did a pretty good job, and we did the best that we can of when it comes to what we thought, how each different player would fit for their teams. But we're here to talk about the Bears draft picks. And this draft for the Bears was pretty big in terms of what we needed. There was a lot of needs this draft that needed to happen. One was obviously the tight end, and we're going to start off this draft with the second round, the 43rd overall pick of the draft, and that is Cole Kmet, the tight end out of Notre Dame. So me and my uncle called it being our first overall pick for the Bears. And I was excited from the moment they called his name. Now I'm gonna go off on a little rant slash tangent. And that's to the Bears fans who are still somewhat in their feelings or upset about this pick, because the day we made this pick, there were Bear fans on all the social media pages losing their minds, saying, "Why did we have to draft a tight end? We already have Jimmy Graham for how much we overpaid him for." And they were saying like we had 10 tight ends and all this stupid stuff that they were saying. And I'm looking at all this stuff on my social media page. I'm like, what are you guys saying? This is a great pick. We needed a tight end, one that has the potential to possibly be the future tight end. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. And then the fact that they brought up, oh, we have 10 tight ends on the roster. You guys are acting as if those 10 tight ends are going to make the main roster and we're just going to be overstacked with tight ends. Only 2 to 3 guys are going to make the main roster, guys. Come on, calm down. I think I think everybody just did all that because it was reactionary based. And I understand that. But if you thought you were going to get a better draft pick out of that, we're trying to address needs now. We can't say go for, what we really want. Yeah, do we need an O lineman? Yes, but the moment we cut Trey Burton, we had to pick up a tight end. And this guy was the best available one, and he was the best tight end in the draft. The analyst said it time and time again. The Bears made the good pick because he was the best one. So that's what I have to say. I thought Bears fans were just being idiotic and stupid from that point. And I hate the fact that they were hating on this dude, and the dude hasn't played it down in the NFL to get what, a sample size we can get. And plus, when you saw his videos after he got drafted, the kid was excited to be a Bear. He obviously is a Bears fan, and he was ready to come to work. And if you did not see it, I don't understand how you can not love the fact that we picked him. But I'm gonna go over some stats. And he's a 6'3" player. He weighs in at 250 pounds. I'm doing his career stats at Notre Dame because obviously his junior year was his best season, so it's technically all his junior year stats. He had 60 receptions for 691 yards receiving. He had 6 touchdowns, and he averaged 11.5 in yards. He seems like he's going to be good, and obviously in his junior year, he was obviously improving from the first couple of years he was in college. And if he can improve in this system, he may not try to get a lot of play time because of Jimmy Graham, especially with how he's getting paid. But I feel like whenever he gets his number called, he'll come in and produce, and hopefully he's much better than what Adam Shaheen gave us.
I like the pick. We picked the pick prior to, which actually says that we actually know something about this roster. The the tight end pick for me, a pick so that Nick Foles can excel in this offense. So Nick Foles, he loved his tight ends back when he was with Philadelphia. I mean, he loved them. He threw constantly to them. He rarely threw to the wide receivers. They were always running double tight end sets, because Nick Foles knew that the way to attack a defense was to beat them between the numbers. And with Graham and Kmet and potentially Shaheen in that lineup, and yeah, you're right. I think they're only going to keep 3, maybe 4 tight ends. They'll probably use one more tight end as a blocking tight end. Now, granted, 4 tight ends is still a lot for a roster, but you do need a blocking tight end whenever you decide to run. If Matt Nagy decides to get his head out between his derriere and decide to call some running plays. So we'll just hope and pray on that. But Nick Foles knows how to use tight ends in the passing game. So the Cole Kmet pick was an absolutely fabulous pick. He was the best tight end in the draft. He was the one that everyone had coveted the Bears would draft, even us two here, as we did on our earlier video. So that pick, coupled in with Nick Foles, the quarterback, coupled in with Jimmy Graham, coupled in with Adam Shaheen, who are all receiving tight ends, made this pick just the sensible and a no-brainer pick for the Chicago Bears. Now, Matt Nagy does know that in order for this offense to excel, he has to get good tight end play. He has to. He comes from the same offense that Peterson is running in Philadelphia. He comes from the same coaching tree as Andy Reid, who has Travis Kelce in Kansas City. So he has to have a tight end in order for this offense to work. So with those 3 receiving tight ends, he's off to a good start, and let's just hope that it pans out.
Yeah. And if the kid actually shows up and he actually puts in some work, he definitely could be not only a future great Bear, but a future possible Hall of Fame player. I mean, he could be the next best, tight end we've had really since Greg Olsen. And the only thing we could only hope for is they don't let him walk like we let Greg Olsen walk. But that was the past management with the Bears, not the current.
Well, I was going to say, by him being going in the second round, he'll probably get a 4-year contract with an option. Because usually I think that's the deal with second rounders. First rounders get 5 years, and second rounders typically get 3 to 4 years with an option year. So he'll be around for a while. The only issue that I'm going to have with Kmet moving forward is who's going to be his quarterback after next year. Will it be Foles? Will they draft a quarterback? Because I just don't believe in my heart of hearts. I believe this is going to be Trubisky's last year, regardless of whatever he does. I don't think that kid is going to throw for 5,000 yards and throw 40 touchdowns. That is not in his makeup. I don't think he has the skill set to be able to put up those type of numbers. So I honestly think this will be Trubisky's last year as quarterback. Nick Foles, he's on a 2-year deal, if I'm correct. I don't think they're going to sign him longer than 2 years. So they basically have that position on a 2-year clock so that they can get whoever's going to run the Bears offense after that. But in the interim, Matt Nagy, oh my goodness gracious, please, let's just get it in gear, man. Let's just get it in gear, please.
So the next pick we had in the second round was the 50th overall pick, and we addressed one of the needs, which essentially replaces Prince Amukamara, and we get Jaylen Johnson, the cornerback out of Utah. This guy, at first I was like, okay, I got to see more. But then when the analysts were talking so highly of this guy, I was like, okay, this guy might actually be pretty good. Now, what I thought the Bears were going to do is probably draft Trayvon Diggs. But I'm still cool with Jaylen Johnson. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds. He had 7 interceptions at his career at Utah, a total of 102 tackles there. He had 11 pass breaks in 2019, which was a team high, and then he had 36 solo tackles last year in college too. He's obviously a big, tall, physical guy, and he seems like he could actually be a day one starter because I don't really have any confidence that Artie Burns or to say Duke Shelley or any
Don't
of these.
say his name. Don't say his name. Don't say that other cornerback's name. Please don't say that other quarterback's name. Please don't. Oh, geez.
the Canadian Football League player we got this offseason. And then
You're going to say it. Go ahead, say it. Go ahead and say his name. Say his
obviously,
name.
you know, obviously he's the opposite of Kyle Fuller. But this guy has a real legit shot at being a lockdown corner. And, you know, when I heard more and more, and I looked up more and more about this guy, this dude has a legit shot at being like legit, you know, I guess you can say our next Charles Tillman, that lockdown go-to corner where you don't want to deal with him. And, you know, he could essentially, you know, as he grows and if he gets better, he could be better than Kyle Fuller, who, even though we do have our issues with Kyle Fuller, he's still technically a top 20 corner in this league. And I'm just impressed. And hopefully this guy ends up starting because I want to see more of this guy. And he looks to be very talented. The only concern we probably will both say we have about this guy is the fact that he has an injury period. Like, he's coming off a torn labrum injury. And it was three injuries the past, like, 3 seasons he played college football. So that's the only other concern that could be is, will this guy be able to stay healthy in an NFL career?
Yeah, I like the Jaylen Johnson pick as well too, physically, and from the numbers he put up while he was at Utah, he has shown he is and can be an NFL cornerback. My only issue with him is his injury history. I think somewhere along the line of 3 shoulder surgeries while he was at Utah. I don't know if it was the right or a left. It could have been a combination of the two. But other than that, if he stays healthy, yes, we might have our guy that can send Kyle Fuller packing, because I'm done with Kyle Fuller. I just don't see the use for him. He's a zone corner. He's not a full man-to-man corner. He gives up too much space to wide receivers. He seems like he just doesn't like to touch anybody other than the football. So he doesn't play I just don't care for Kyle Fuller. It's anyone who knows me knows, as a football player, I do not like Kyle Fuller. So cheers to Jaylen Johnson. So hopefully you can come in, do a really good job, be physical, as I believe that you played in Utah, and let's get Kyle Fuller out of there, because to me he serves no purpose with the schemes that he's been playing. And on top of it, he played the same way in 2 different schemes. Under Vic Fangio, he played the same way, but the front 7 bailed him out a lot of times. And you know, with this scheme right here, he's playing the same way. So, but this time, this game was totally different than what we're normally used to, how they played up under Fangio, and he played the exact same way. So, Jaylen Johnson, yes. Kyle Fuller.
So now we move to the 5th round of the draft. So so far I've addressed 2 different needs, tight end and DB, well, corner. So the next thing on my list at this time was like, okay, we definitely need offensive line, but we could take a safety as well. Now, at this time, I'm just over here minding my own business, playing a video game or something. And then next thing you know, I look over to my laptop on my stream, and then I see the Bears trade up to they trade with the Minnesota Vikings, and they trade their 2021 4th-round pick for the 5th-round pick, which is the 155th overall pick, and they draft Travis Gibson, the defensive end out of Tulsa. Now, at first, I was like, okay, this is an interesting pick. But then I watched this guy's highlights, and then when I looked more into this guy, this dude is a legit monster. He gives us more depth at the defensive end, and he could be that 3rd pass rusher, you know, that helps out when, say, Robert Quinn or Khalil Mack need to take a breather for a down, and he can come in and get some quality sacks. He is 6'4". He weighs in at 268 pounds. In 2019, he had 25 solo tackles with a total of 49 on tackles. He had 8.0 sacks, And he forced 2 fumbles this past year, but as in the total of his college career, he forced 8. So this guy essentially makes a lot of plays. He gets to the quarterback, and that's the best thing we can, get out of a pass rusher. And hopefully he gets more production than, say, Leonard Floyd when we drafted him. As at the time, I want this guy to produce. And when you look at this dude's videos, he's a big guy. Like, he's a big dude. And just looking at his stat lines, it's crazy that just in 2019, he had 8.0 sacks and then 2 forced fumbles. That's essentially, a miniature version of what Khalil Mack does in essentially a game. But hopefully this guy, he can be that third go-to pass rusher when, Quinn or Mack need to take a breather. And I just look at this as another defensive line depth play to obviously, keep guys fresh and, have added pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, at first when they drafted Gibson, I was just like, oh, here we go. The Bears are trying their same old, let's go to the small schools and see if we can find a diamond in the rough type of player. Typically, the 5th round is the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. All of your players from your big name schools, your SECs, your Big 12s, they're typically all gone during this point. So now between 5 and 7, this is where you try to find your diamonds in the rough. So that was my first thinking when Gibson was selected. Then I tried to then. Shortly after that, I understood what the Bears were doing because last year they had a lot of injuries on the defensive line to the point Matt got worn out. They tried to move him around so many times and he just kept getting doubled and triple teamed primarily because there was no one else on that line that can get to the quarterback. Leonard Floyd couldn't get to the quarterback. I don't know if it was because of something that was going on with Leonard Floyd or they kept dropping him back in pass coverage. But most times when the Bears' defensive line was highly aggressive, then they were very successful. So I like the Gibson pick. Now, granted, I think he's going to be that type of player where they'll only bring in passing situations. I think the Minnesota Vikings, they started a trend with moving defensive linemen around on the defensive line, having edge rushers play at the tackle positions and rush up the middle. They did that an awful lot during the playoffs last year, and it was highly successful. So it could be that's where the Bears are going with this pick, because now with 3 edge rushers that they have now on the defensive line, then I think they have a little bit more versatility so that they can do certain things like that and confuse some defenses. So all in all, at first I didn't like the pick. I was kind of hoping for a safety or even an offensive lineman maybe. But when you start thinking about the pick in its totality, you kind of do understand where Pace was going with this pick. He needed versatility on that defensive line, and he needed depth on that defensive line.
Okay, so then the next pick in the 5th round we had, which was one of our own 5th round picks, and this is the 163rd overall pick in the draft, and we draft cornerback Kendall Vildor out of Georgia Southern. Now, like obviously you guys heard to start the video, this was the one kind of head scratcher, kind of iffy pick I was on because at this point in time, I was like, okay, why? I thought we already got our corner in terms of Jaylen Johnson. Why draft another one, especially with the different type of depths we have at corner at the moment? I don't know much what to really say. It's kind of that thing where it's like, okay, well, I'll take it, but we could have drafted something else. Maybe we could have just drafted the safety that was available because there were some pretty decent safeties still at the time that were still not yet drafted. And when I looked at this, I was like, it's okay, I'll take it. But, it's not that I wanted it. So his stats, well, he's 6'4". Yeah, no, he's 5'11". He weighs in at 190, so he's obviously a shorter corner, which could be a weakness of his. And people did say they could see him as a nickel corner, possibly essentially soon to be replacing Buster Skrine whenever he walks. Now, his stats-wise, he had 25 pass breakups, and this is his career. He had 9 interceptions, and in 2019, he had 23 tackles. The one thing that stood out about me is, from what I heard, is he's pretty physical, and they said one of his best games was against Clemson, where he barely let the Clemson receivers, make any passes on him, which is really impressive for a guy from Georgia Southern. But still, I'm kind of like, well, okay, he could possibly be the future nickel corner spot. We're just going to see what he does. Obviously, he's going to have to come in and work his butt off to get where he's at. But I don't know what this thing will do. Maybe we'll see this as, hey, that's that one pick that actually turned out for, Ryan Pace that is actually pretty good. We're just going to see what this guy does. Obviously, he's not going to be a day one starter. He might just be on the practice squad and have to work his way up. But it's going to be interesting to see because, it's going to be him, Duke Shelley and Buster Skrine. Buster Skrine's obviously going to keep that nickel spot. But it will probably be between him and Duke Shelley for that nickel corner. So whenever Buster Skrine's time is up in Chicago.
Now, this is the pick where I'm like, here we go. Small school. That one game that you spoke of, that was pretty much the only time where maybe an NFL scout can actually see this guy and say, hey, maybe he might be something. Here's another pick in which, hey, maybe we can find our diamond in the rough. I was thinking with this pick, you got your cornerback. Let's go get a safety or offensive lineman. All right, here we go. Another cornerback. We have cornerbacks on the roster. We just drafted one. Why in the Blue Blazers are you drafting this kid? He's small. He's probably going to have to work his way up to the depth chart. They will probably go ahead and throw him in as a nickel corner in passing situations. But I just didn't see the point of drafting another cornerback, especially when we had glaring needs such as offensive line and safety. And again, it's another small school player that the Bears drafted again, trying to search for that diamond in the rough. Whereas, players from bigger schools at the safety and the offensive line position got drafted shortly afterwards. So I'm not a fan of the pick. I hope the young man does well. As Bears fans, we're hoping all of our players do well. But this particular pick, at this particular position, I just didn't see the need for it, considering we drafted the same position the pick before. I'm sorry, but there were much more glaring needs other than cornerback at this pick. I was hoping safety or offensive lineman, and the Bears just didn't do it. But again, they drafted another small school player in which they can hope that, hey, hopefully he turns out to be something.
Yeah, who knows what, Vilder will do. Maybe that was on the Bears board as one of the best players available for them. So we're just going to have to see how he turns out. I'm not a fan of it, but we'll just have to see what this guy does. So
yeah, we'll see.
So the next pick, and we actually trade again in the 5th round, and we trade up. And we trade essentially our 5th round pick to the Eagles for essentially both our 6th round picks in the draft. Because I had to double check that. And I was like, wait, do we still have our 6th round picks after trading with the Eagles? No, the Eagles got both our 6th round picks in this year's draft. And then I believe we also received their 7th round pick as well. So the player we get is Darnell Mooney, wide receiver out of Tulane. I was like, okay, I got to think about this. I was like, I thought you'd think they would probably take Prochet from SMU, but they took Darnell Mooney. And when I looked more into this, and especially when the analysts talked about this guy is fast. He is extremely fast, so he could be the deep threat type of receiver we were looking for. Obviously, this is a guy that will try to look to replace Taylor Gabriel's production. But he's 5'11", so he's a smaller wide receiver. He weighs in at 175 pounds. In 2019, he had 48 receptions for 713 yards and had 5 TDs. But in his career, he had 9 TDs and receiving yards of 2,575. So this guy does rack up a lot of yards in terms of receiving. I do remember watching one Tulane game, and I believe that's the one Tulane game against Houston when they just throw it up to him and he just comes down with it. And it was, this guy is fast. Obviously, there's going to be some progress. He's going to have to work his way up. I don't see him as a day one starter, but he has potential to be a day one starter. And if he comes out and he becomes what we need in a receiver, which is be that deep threat, which will, back the defense up and be like, we might need to cover this guy, otherwise he's going to give us problems. That's going to be great. And especially if he's going to be our third best receiver on the team. You got Allen Robinson, who I still think they need to extend right now as your number one. Then you have Anthony Miller, who's your number two receiver. And then you have Darnell Mooney as your third best. You could be having a three-receiver tandem right there. And, I heard the comments he said after he was drafted. He was saying, I promise you I'm going to make a lot of noise. So hopefully he lives up to that. Obviously, Matt Nagy might need to tell him, like, listen, guy, cool down. In the NFL now, they're big boys now. You get just cool that. I can understand your passion, but calm down a bit. But I can see he takes after Anthony Miller in terms of confidence he has in himself. And I feel like this guy will actually be a really good player for us if he turns out to be really good.
Well, when he was drafted, I was just like, oh, here we go. Again, another small school, another try to find that diamond in the rough, things of that nature. And yeah, he is small. So again, Matt Nagy likes his guys that can create space, or who can actually do a lot of things when they have space. Tariq Cohen's a small guy. This guy's a small guy. I think Anthony Miller is maybe a smaller guy too. He's not as big as Robinson, but again, he's another small guy. Taylor Gabriel was a small guy. So this offense excels when you got these small guys, these small fast guys, creating space for guys like Robinson. So I understand that. At first, I probably think that they'll utilize him a lot on special teams, punt returns, kick returns, things of that nature, so they can get his feet wet. As far as him being a third down back, a third wide receiver, we'll see. And the guy is fast, although he don't have that Henry Ruggs speed, but he did run a 4.3 at the combine. I think it was a 4.35, 4.36, somewhat up in that range. So he is fast. So we'll see. Again, we're going to wish these young men well. And I'm not going to sit up here and blast the guy because he was drafted by, the Chicago Bears from, another small school. So the Bears, again, are still looking for – they still reach out to these small schools for their diamonds in the rough. So this guy must have been on their draft board because they traded up to get him. So he had to have been on their draft board. So the Bears saw something in him. Hopefully they see something in him other than speed. And we are desperately hoping that he works well. They probably could use another wide receiver moving forward.
Well, we did sign an undrafted free agent wide receiver out of Kentucky.
Rookie?
Rookie. Ahmad Wagner.
Yeah. See, again, whereas we have two experienced wide receivers, and keep in mind, Anthony Miller was a late bloomer. He didn't really start playing really well until week 10. So hopefully that production that he gave from week 10 on is still with us during week 1. But right now, we do need a lot of experience and depth at the wide receivers position. So hopefully these two kids can actually come in and do something. But I think more so, as long as you got them two bookend wide receivers and the two tight ends and Graham and Kmet that can probably come in and work between the numbers, they'll allow guys like Robinson and Miller to do their thing on the outside. So Nagy has a plan. Hopefully he play calls to the point whereas we can actually move the football and score some points. But I honestly think this is a good pick. He serves a purpose. And let's see what that purpose is when we get him on the field.
Okay, so now we move on to the final round, which is the 7th round of the draft. And so at this point, I was like, okay, we have 2 draft picks, back-to-back draft picks. You know, we need to address the need of safety and offensive line like immediately. And me knowing the Bears, I feel like they're not gonna do it. I feel like, especially when it comes to the offensive line, I'm like, these guys really just on the offensive line. They're just gonna stick with the guys and probably think, oh, it was just an off year for the offensive line. We got a new offensive line coach. We should be good now. And then, you know, I was like, just take an offensive lineman. You know, everybody else is taking offensive linemen. The Packers took like 3 offensive linemen this entire draft, and the Packer fans are they're not too happy about their draft. But you know,
they're not happy. They're not happy about their first 2, but they should be happy about the next few picks. They got protection for Aaron Rodgers moving forward for this next year, so they should be okay.
And I was thinking too, like, well, we just signed the one offensive lineman from the Packers. I believe his name was Jason Spriggs, and then the guy who came over from Seattle. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but I was like, great, they're just gonna just roll out with that. So with the 226th pick, we draft Arlington Hambright, the offensive tackle out of Colorado. I don't know much. I still have to watch more on this guy, but obviously we got a need here. So he's going to compete for, you know, a spot on the offensive line, whether it's guard or maybe trying to, which I highly doubt they'll replace Leno or Massey, as much as I want them to get off the offensive line. You know, we're going to see how he turns out. Obviously, offensive linemen, it takes a few times or a few years for them to develop and be, you know, dominant. Not like, you know, say, you know, off the first round, you know, offensive lines that can just come in and have an immediate impact. But I guess some things about Hambright, he's 6'5", and he weighs in at 300 pounds. Hopefully this guy, you know, when he gets his chance, he can come in and do a really good job. And, you know, that's the best thing we could use. At this point, the best thing is this offensive lineman turns out to be a really good offensive lineman for the Bears, or at least a decent one.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, safety or offensive line, but hopefully offensive line. The biggest need that the Bears had was basically offensive line. They couldn't run the football. They couldn't win at the line of scrimmage. They really couldn't move the opposing defensive line. So they really needed to get some depth on the offensive line. Now, they did bring in a couple free agents, and I'm pretty sure those free agents will probably more than likely be day one starters because they do have experience. These 2 young men that we're talking about right now, yeah, I don't think they're going to be day one starters. In fact, I don't really see them playing too much early on. But again, it's offensive line. We got bodies. All we need to do is get those bodies to be able to be game ready whenever the NFL season opens up. Hopefully it opens up on time, considering everything that's going on in the world right now. But hopefully these young men will be ready on day one.
And then the next pick in the 7th round, I thought we would pick safety, or some people were clamoring they wanted to draft quarterback, especially Anthony Gordon, who I did wish they drafted, but he's actually going to Seattle, which sucks. But with the 227th pick, we draft Lavacious Simmons, offensive tackle out of Tennessee State. Really, there's nothing else I got to repeat. It's kind of the same thing with Arlington Hambright. You know, hopefully this guy can come in whenever his number is called on, and whenever he gets his chance, he can come in. You know, he can be a decent to good player, and, you know, he has more of an upside than more of a downside instead of being just a draft offensive line bust.
Yeah, again, I've been making the point, you know, for a good bit of the video that the Bears, again, looking for that diamond in the rough. This young man was from Tennessee State, so the Bears don't really seem to like looking at the bigger schools for their earlier pick, other than places like Notre Dame, and which is local, and they see them a lot. So whereas all the other teams seem to be drafting from the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and things of that nature. And Colorado is, you know, can be considered, you know, one of the largest schools who gets a lot of I shouldn't say notoriety, but they get they get a lot of shine from the national media in some areas. But at some point, I would hope that the Bears start looking at players who in college prove that they can play on day one. They seem to draft a lot of projects, and that's basically all I saw from picks. I'd probably say from the fourth through the seventh rounds, projects that they hope they can develop and that can actually become starters. At this particular point, if the Bears are truly interested in winning a Super Bowl, stop drafting projects. Draft guys that can come in and play right now. That's what I was thinking the entire time, that, they're just trying to, find that diamond in the rough, So, and they've been successful a lot of times, but most times it's, even last year, I think they drafted players that are diamonds in the rough. Montgomery from Iowa State, diamond in the rough, so we will see. But I still say the key to the Bears, again, their offense is just going to, their offense is all on Matt Nagy. The defense is going to be whether Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack and the rest of the players on the defensive line can get to the quarterback and relieve some stress off of knuckleheads like Kyle Fuller. Because if they can get to the quarterback, then what Kyle Fuller does not do is minimized. The rookie on the other end is minimized. Relieve some assistance on the safeties. That defensive line has got to get to the quarterback. So we got to be successful in those particular areas. So we'll see how these projected players, diamonds in the rough, so to speak, will play. So we'll see. We're going to hope for the best. But as always, as Bears fans, we fear the worst.
Yeah. Just some more information on Simmons. He's the same height as Heimbert, but he weighs in 15 pounds heavier than him. And before we close this video off, I'm just going to run through the undrafted free agents we signed to contracts, and we'll talk just probably about a minute about each of them. Maybe we'll probably make a separate video just talking about them, because still the Bears could sign more undrafted free agents from this time on now. So far, I believe we have 8. But, I'm going to get to start on that. So we actually talked earlier about this, a few, minutes about him, but we signed Ahmad Wagner, receiver out of Kentucky. He looks pretty big. I've seen him. I don't have any stats written down because really we're not going to talk about them, but he looks like a tall receiver. He looks like he's a pretty physical one too. But like I said, he's obviously going to have to work his way up because he's an undrafted player, and we're going to see if he can make the roster.
Yeah, we need depth. Actually, the Bears' problem over the past few years is they really can't afford injury. They've had injury whenever a player goes down, it's very difficult for them to bring a player off the bench and keep the party going, so to speak. So the wide receiving core is another section of the Bears offense that has no depth outside of Miller and Robinson. So I understand that pick. Let's just hope we can get these guys developed so they can, make a shine on day one. Now, granted, SEC player Wagner is good from someone who's actually watched the SEC. He is good. Is he good enough to make a roster? We'll see.
The next undrafted free agent we signed on my list, I wrote him down, was Rashad Smith, linebacker out of FAU. He could have a chance at making the roster. It would give us more linebacker depth just in case we have the, crazy linebacker injuries we had last year with, Danny Trevathan and Smith. Because as you guys remember, we lost Nick Kwiatkowski to the Las Vegas Raiders because he was asking for a lot of money. So we don't have, say that good backup to come in. So maybe this guy can make the roster and say be a backup to one of those two guys and come in and try to put in some more work.
Well, you forgot St. Louis. I forgot his last name, but I
Yeah,
really, well, for the mispronunciation of his last name, I should say, after Smith went down, he came in and played pretty
oh yeah,
well. He came in and played pretty well. And now that Trevathan is back, we're top heavy at the linebacker position. So I can understand bringing in a free agent to hopefully can crack that. But you know, the Bears' problem is depth. When a player gets injured, it's very difficult for them to bring a guy, Green coming right off the bench and ask him to excel at a particular position. So we will see. Let's just hope none of these guys get hurt. And well, it's football, so of course somebody's going to get hurt. It's the nature of the beast. But you got to be able to have players that can come in so you can actually keep that train on the track. And that's always been the Bears' problem. They can't bring guys off the bench to keep this train on the track.
The next undrafted free agent we signed is Dieter Iceland, offensive guard out of Yale. Some people, from what I've been hearing, is they saying this dude's actually legit and he could possibly be a sleeper if he gets a chance. It's the same thing with the last two O-linemen we got in this, draft. If this guy can come into training camp and impress the Bears coaches and, say get into at least maybe a backup or possible starting role, and, he's doing good, maybe the guy can, be up there with one of our better linemen of the past, I don't know how many years we've had, really the last good offensive lineman we had was Kyle Long. But hopefully this guy can come in. He comes from Yale, so that's the only thing that's kind of not promising because, Ivy League schools don't get a lot of coverage.
That's true. They don't get a lot of coverage. But one knock on Ivy League players is that their football IQ is typically pretty high. Physically, they may not be able to excel in certain areas, but their football IQ is typically pretty high. So, with that in regard, then I say it's okay. That's the third offensive lineman they would have brought in during this time of the year. They'll probably bring in maybe a few more because offensive line is a glaring need that they got to work with. So they had Kyle Long retire. They brought in 2 free agents, and now these 3 young men are coming in. They are doing things to hopefully try to excel at the offensive line. Now, and again, we shall see. But bringing this young man in, especially with his pedigree coming in from Yale, he may not be. I think the thing is he's not as big as the other guys. He may be a smaller offensive lineman. But
when I see him, he was pretty big, actually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think that the thing is about Yale guys is that football IQ. They tend to adapt to the NFL a lot quicker, adapt to the playbook a lot quicker. Not to say the other guys are, they don't, but all offensive linemen for whatever reason, all tend to be pretty adept and smart. It's just that, and their football IQs tend to be a little bit higher than, let's just say, other positions on the field. And they have to be. So we'll see how this guy turns out. But I do like the fact they're bringing in a lot of offensive linemen to try to help that part of the team out.
The next undrafted free agent we signed is Badara Traore, offensive tackle out of LSU. So another offensive lineman. Obviously, they're trying to get that depth, see, who's going to compete. And it's looking like maybe we might get an open competition for offensive line with a few guys staying there. I could see Cody White here still being on the line. He will probably go into the season, our snapper, our center. When I looked more into this, they did say this guy was a backup player, but he did start 4 games for LSU last year. So he does have, starting experience. I think he'll just probably be a practice squad player. We'll see what he could do. Maybe he could be another of those people that just build through, time and then maybe gets his chance and makes the roster and possibly shows something the Bears can see.
Well, at least he's SEC. That's the only thing I can say about the pick. I mean, he's LSU. So, the guy that didn't get drafted. So we'll see. But again, they are adding a lot of players to the offensive line so they can get a look-see, just so they can get some type of read on how they can actually make this offensive line work moving forward for the upcoming season.
Okay, so we got 4 more undrafted free agents on my list so far. We do sign Lacaille London from Western Illinois, and he's a defensive end. More defensive line depth. Really nothing much to say here. Obviously, he's hometown boy from Illinois. Well, if he is from Illinois, but he went to school in Illinois. He'll probably be a practice squad player, with especially the crazy depth we've already have at defensive line. But obviously, he'll have to fight with, Travis Gibson, obviously, to say possibly make the roster, as well as the other few guys on this list.
Well, I would have liked to have seen, at this particular point, I would have liked to have seen the Bears not necessarily go with an edge rusher, but maybe a defensive tackle. We did have issues stopping the run, and I didn't really see the Bears try to increase the depth at that particular position. So that's the part that's worrying me at this particular moment. What are they going to do moving forward to increase the depth at that position? But this pick is this is not a pick. This addition is a nice addition to the practice squad. So we'll see where he goes. We'll see what he does. We'll see what he learns, and we'll see if that can translate to the NFL once they hit the field.
And speaking of defensive tackles, we actually do sign a defensive tackle, Trayvon McSwain, out of Duke. So obviously this answers my uncle's question. And yeah, so this guy, he can come in and he could maybe be, that third, maybe fourth, fifth defensive tackle. Obviously, he's gonna have to work his way up. We have pretty stout defensive tackles like Eddie Goldman, obviously Akeem Hicks. Roy Robinson Harrison, he can come in as their backup. This guy's gonna have to work, his butt off to possibly make the team. But who knows? We'll see what he can do too.
I didn't like this because he's from Duke. There's nothing that's good that comes from Duke. Greg, are you hearing me? Cameron's father, there is nothing that's good comes from Duke. Duke basketball sucks. Duke football sucks. I don't care if it's Duke, it sucks. Thank you very much. I'm good.
So next up, we actually could possibly get our third running back who could make the roster, and that is our Tabas Peers from Oregon State. I think this guy probably has a high chance at maybe making the roster as the third running back on the team, because we do have Montgomery and then we do have a smaller Tariq Cohen. From what I saw, this guy is a pretty physical running back. So he could be what we're looking for, especially after the Mike Davis stuff we had to deal with last year. So I actually see this undrafted free agent possibly making the team if he shows a lot in preseason.
Yeah, I did like this one as well, too, because Mike Davis was a bust for us. I don't know if it was, Mike Nagy or if it was the offensive line. What contributed to Mike Davis not succeeding as a Chicago Bear? But it looked like it was a myriad of things. It just didn't look like Mike Nagy had the confidence in him. So, or he just didn't have the confidence in the running game. But I like this pick. And then on top of this kid played with a big-time quarterback in Justin A. Burr as well. So hopefully this guy –
Not Oregon.
Say again?
That was
You said Oregon.
Oregon State.
Oh, golly gee. The cow. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I thought you said Oregon. So I didn't hear the state part. My bad. But anyway, the kid, hopefully he can actually crack that top 3. I don't believe that the depth chart has, I think they have 4 running backs right now, I think. Well, they haven't really released the depth chart anyway. The depth chart won't come around until later on. But this kid can actually crack that top 3. We need someone to actually be able to run between the tackles. Tariq Cohen is not that kid. Montgomery has proven he can actually run the football, so hopefully this kid can actually be able to do something.
And then the last undrafted free agent, and I just did this for kicks and giggles just to leave this last. He signed outside linebacker, and when I actually freaking just went downstairs, or I just went on Twitter, first thing that pops on my page is this guy, Ladarius Max from Buffalo. And if you hear about the last name, that is Khalil Mack's younger brother. So this guy has a lot of upside. If anything, this guy has a lot of upside. One, he's our best player, little brother. So he has a chance if he can impress in preseason. Because Ryan Pacey, I did hear the words he said about Ladarius Mack. He seems pretty high on him. So if this guy can make the starting roster, we might get double Mack brothers. And if this guy can, show or even, be somewhat similar like his brother, oh my goodness. Teams are about to be running for their life and about to be scared.
Yeah. The only issue that I'm going to have are the expectations that come with the last name.
Yeah.
So let's not get too overly excited. Let's see what the kid can do once he hits the field. The last name, hopefully it'll bring some things to him, but Bears fans are just going to hope that the last name brings what the Khalil brings, and they're just going to hope that. So let's not put all these expectations on this young man. Let's leave him alone. Yeah. Let him play. And if he, for whatever reason, comes to that point, it's great. But all we want this kid to do is be able to contribute in whatever way he can moving forward. So let's stop it with the, hey, he's Khalil Mack 2.0. Not right now. So welcome to the Bears. Work hard and keep your mind sharp and your spirit clean. I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, especially with an older brother like him. Obviously, his older brother.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All the time. The only other thing is he was a rotational player on Buffalo. So, if he does end up making the team, I could see him being a rotational player. Obviously, probably playing, linebacker in coverage or maybe sometimes even, rushing the passer. So, hopefully, his future is he rushes the passer or rushes the quarterback alongside his brother. But all these undrafted free agents, they're going to, have to step their game up in training camp to, show to Matt Nagy and the other coaches and their position coaches that they want to be on this roster. But, it's really it. But overall, this entire draft, and we're not going to talk about the undrafted free agents grade, but this draft, I'm going to give it a B. We addressed needs that were major, but we didn't address all our needs. For example, one of the undrafted free agents I actually wanted to get was Anthony Gordon, quarterback out of Washington State. Or even if they were to draft him in the draft, because then say, okay, Mitch don't work out, and then Nick Foles, he stinks up the joint. You could maybe possibly put Anthony Gordon in, who was the second, leading passer in college football in terms of things. Or, you could just have him sit and maybe just, learn the Matt Nagy offense, and then say maybe next year if things don't pan out with Trubisky, which I don't think they will, you can put him in and he can show off what he, can do. Because Gardner Minshew, he looked pretty nice in the few games he played. But overall, this entire 2020 draft for the Bears, it was a B. It was a decent draft. It was a good draft. Ryan Pace addressed certain needs that we needed. And essentially, I said it in my tweet today, the management did their job. Whether they're going to sign a few more players, I still see they have to still address that safety position, whether that's through undrafted free agents or that's just straight up through free agency. That's what management's going to really have to worry about, because I do not believe Deion Bush might just stay the starter. They'll at least try to get some competition for him. But like I said in my tweet, the management did their job now. It comes down to the players to execute and do what they need to do, as well as the coaches. So that's really all I got to say.
I may not go as far as a B. I may go C+. They did address some needs, but me personally, granted the defensive line it was a glaring need as well too. Although there were other players I would have liked to have seen drafted, and I'm gonna sound like an Alabama homer, but Anthony Jennings and Terrell Lewis, they wind up getting drafted after Jaylen Johnson. If you're going to trade up to come get a miniature wide receiver, then you could have easily traded up to come get a defensive lineman as well, too, from one of the bigger schools. They did address offensive line, albeit very late in the draft in the 7th round, and also with the undrafted free agents. I wasn't really too particularly, fond of that. But all in all, they did address the tight end position. They did address the offensive line. They did address the defensive line. So moving forward, let's see how these kids react once we get to, whenever they release the season open for training camps and OTLs. So let's see how these kids react moving forward. We're going to hope for the best for them again. But all in all, I would probably say C+, because, again, the small school diamond in the rough, theory that the Bears seems to address every year. It's, a friend of mine always say, hey, draft playmakers, draft guys who can play now. And I don't think the Bears actually did that, with the exception of probably Kmet.
Yeah, but other than that, that's really it. So for one, hopefully, the football season can start on time. Albeit it might not probably have no fans in the stands, but at this point, I don't really care because this season looks.
I'm watching from overseas anyway, so it's not unless they go to England, which I think the Cubs Cardinals game got canceled here in the UK, and I was going to that. So, but other than that, my football watching is actually on television anyway.
Yeah, but hopefully things can go. Obviously, there might not be no fans, but I really want an NFL season start because this looks to be a really good NFL season. Coming with all the draft picks and just speculation of all sorts of things that could be happening for all the 32 teams. Mostly, I look forward to the Bears because, especially with now the whole CBA change when it comes to playoffs, the Bears have a hiding chance at making the playoffs. So technically, there's no excuse to miss the playoffs this time. And you got. I'm just going to say it before I say it again. You got to win the division first. You want to lock up at least one. And, you got to do essentially the same thing you did in 2018. Win your division, whether it's split with the Packers, sweep the Vikings, and sweep the Lions. Do that, and then just take care of the wins outside the division. And don't have those – and I'm praying, hopefully we don't have those bad losses against bad teams, which are clear wins. And like I said we probably won't be talking Bears for a while, unless, circumstances change. But really that's it. And the next Bears video to be looking for is probably preseason week 1, essentially.
Yep.
But
that's looking forward to that. Yep, looking forward to that. I think the season offensively is going to jump on whether Mike Nagy can make these tight ends work between the numbers. If he can make the tight ends work between the numbers, then I think our offense is going to be fine. But he still has to run the football. You can't win without running the football. You can't win without stopping the run. You can't win without your quarterback making mistakes. You just can't win. And the Bears just couldn't do any of those things last year, and which is the reason why they failed. So the division is wide open. Aaron Rodgers is coming into training camp very ticked off. The Vikings did some good things. The Detroit Lions they're the Detroit Lions. So they're imploding from within. So this division is up for the taking, and I think we can actually get it this year, especially with the extra playoff spot.
I won't make any predictions, but, hopefully the offense, goes up from where it had desperately needed to go up last year. And the defense looks like it might be one of the better defense, might be, that same defense was 2018. But we're all going to see, other than really anything, we're going to, the next video I'm going to give regarding the Bears is probably going to be after preseason week 1, if that happens.
Yep.
Other than that, if it doesn't happen really, then maybe your predictions, just in case the season, start at a different time. But like I said, we're just all hoping and praying, whether there's no fans in the stands or anything, just, you guys just stay safe out there, and that's, the best thing you can do. I said it in my other videos if you guys haven't, heard it before. Yeah, right now it may be pretty bad, but things will start to get better as the days, weeks, and months will go on. So other than that,
Yeah, things will get better. All we have to do is just make sure we listen to our healthcare professionals, follow their guidance, follow what they're asking us to do as far as stay-at-home orders and social distancing, cover your face up, wash your hands. As long as we continue to do those things, we'll be fine moving forward, and NFL season should open up on time.
All right, guys. So we're going to get out of here. We'll catch you guys on the next Chicago Bears video, which will probably be around August. But till then, guys, we're signing out. We'll catch you guys on the next Bears video. Catch you guys later. Peace.
Holla.